Hi, these are my favorite books of 2025. I read 52 books total in 2025, and these are my favorite seven-ish favorite books or series that I read this year. To start off the year, I read The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I read this one like January 1st of 2025, so it was about a year ago now, so I don't remember that much about it, but I did give it 5 stars. I just remember the writing was really beautiful, really poetic. There was literally nothing bad I could say about this book, no real flaws that I could see. Um, just the characters and how they interacted was so just like beautiful. Yeah, just a good book overall. The next books that I read were the Naturals books by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I don't have a physical copy of these books, but the second and third books especially were just really, really good. The third book was my favorite out of the whole series. Just really interesting. I felt like the romance aspect could have been a little bit better, but again, it's a YA young adult series. So, but I feel like overall like the mystery part of it was really good. Just a really good series. I gave all of the books 4 or 4.5 stars. So just a good series. Nextly, I read Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. I think I read this one in March of this year. But after I read this one, like I could just tell while I was reading that this was just a really beautiful book with just amazing writing. I really, really like the main character, Elizabeth. Um, could just like see myself in her, um, related to her. I just thought the writing was really, really good. So like while I was reading it, I just knew that this was gonna be 5 stars. Just one of those books. Um, but after I read this, it was my favorite book that I had ever read before until I read a few more books this year. So this was a 5 star, and it was one of my favorite books this year, probably my third favorite book of the entire year. Nextly, I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I read this one like right after it came out, so I forget if that was March or April. But anyway, I gave all of the Hunger Games books at least 4 stars. I gave Mockingjay 4 stars, and then I gave Hunger Games Catching Fire and this book 5 stars. I've not read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes yet, but I probably will sometime in 2026. Anyway, this book was just a 5 star. Like the whole series is just a 5 star series. Cried at the end of this book, just really sad. Like I knew what was gonna happen because I have read the other books and watched all the movies and everything, and I knew what was gonna happen at the end, but it was still just devastating. 5 stars for this book. Nextly, I read The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. I think I read this one in April, like March or April-ish. But after I read this one, I was like, oh yeah, this is my favorite book of the whole year. I still have one more book that was actually better than this one. So this was my second favorite book of the whole year. But I could just see myself in Eden, the main character, a lot. Could just really relate to her, could see what she was struggling through. Just made me really, really sad. I got to the end of this book, like the last probably like 30 pages, and I just started sobbing. Like I literally, if you've read this book and you know like what's revealed in the last 30-ish pages, like you just know what I was sobbing about. But if you haven't read it, I don't want to spoil it or anything. Anyway, like if I really recommend this book, if you are like 16-ish, like even like adults can read it and they would still get something out of this book. But it's more of a young adult book, I feel like, but it does deal with pretty heavy topics. Um, but I feel like if you're 16-ish, you should be able to handle this book. But it was just a really devastating book. She literally slept on her bedroom floor for 4 years and no one noticed. Like, no one in her family noticed. And no one seemed like they were there for her, like, ever. Her friends, her parents, her brother, like, nobody knew what happened to her and nobody was really there for her. So I could just really feel for her in this book. The next book I read was Rebel Witch and Heartless Hunter. Heartless Hunter is the first one, and then Rebel Witch is the second one, but I actually thought that Rebel Witch was better than Heartless Hunter. I think I gave this one 4 stars and this one 4.5 stars, but it was bordering on 5 stars, but I just felt like in order for me to give a book 5 stars, it has to have, like, the it factor. Like, it has to be, I don't know, I'm really harsh on giving 5 stars, so, but this book, I will say, like, it was very close to 5 stars. It just didn't have that it factor, I guess, of me giving it 5 stars, because I'm just really, really picky about that, and I don't give books 5 stars unless they just have, like, amazing writing, plot, characters, and I really, like, relate to the main character or a character in the book. Like, if I find myself really relating to them or really understanding them and I could just tell, like, the writing is really, really good, then I'll give it 5 stars. But for this book, I thought it was a really good story and a really good plot, good book, but I couldn't really relate to the main character. I couldn't see myself in her. So I did give it 4.5 stars, but this duology is really good. I do recommend. Nextly, I read the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy. There they are. The first book was my favorite one out of the 3, and then the third one was my next favorite, and then the second one was my least favorite. But I did give this one 4.5 stars and the other one's 4 stars. Excuse me, sorry. But I thought this trilogy was really well paced. I thought it had a good plot, good characters. It had a little bit of romance in it, but I thought all of it was really good. The third book, like, I was literally, like, jaw dropped to the floor. Like, I couldn't believe what was happening. But I really liked the twists in all 3 of these books. Just a really good series. And then I read, I can't pick it up, it's so heavy. Okay. The Boys of Tommen. So these are 4 books out of the 6 that are out right now, because these are the deluxe editions, and the 5th and 6th books that are the deluxe versions don't come out until February, I believe, or March or something like that. So I'm not able to get those 2 yet. But I do have the first 4 books. I have read the last 2 books, but I read them on my Kindle, so I don't have them. But this series is, like, overall as a series, it's my favorite one that I've ever read. I feel like it is a bit, like, the characters are, like, 15-ish years old, so I do feel like it's a little bit, like, young for me because I'm 18, but, like, the themes in these books do feel more mature and feel a lot older, so I do feel like the author could have, like, I don't know, like, could have made either the characters a different age or, like, I don't know, but that was, like, the only thing that I thought that was like weird about these books was just that the main characters were like 15 and younger, really. Like the oldest that they got was 18, I think, or 19, which was Joey and Aoife, which is like the second set of books. But I couldn't really like, I don't know. I felt weird reading like about a 15-year-old romance, but the first book was my favorite one out of the whole series, which the girl was like 15 and she turned 16, and then the guy was 17, I think. But the first book was my favorite one. The second book, a lot of people say is their favorite, but I felt like I enjoyed the first book. I enjoyed reading it, the process of reading it, a lot more than the second one. But the second one did have more of the like actual romance and like actual events that happened, I guess. Like the very end of the first book, like right like the very end of it down here, had a like an intense scene, but I feel like the rest of this book was more just like leading up to the romance, which I guess I enjoyed more, like just the process of reading this one more. And then Joey and Aoife's books, a lot of people say this is their favorite couple, but I couldn't, like, I don't know, I just couldn't really see it, I guess. Like I get them as a couple and I liked reading these books, but I feel like Johnny and Shannon were my favorite couple out of all of them. But yeah, this book down here, it's literally like 800 something pages. And I read this entire series of 6 books in a month, I think. Like the month of September, I read all of them. And then Taming Seven, which is the 5th book in the series, the one after this one down here. Taming Seven was the one that I cried to the absolute most, but I do feel like that book didn't center around the supposed main characters of the book, which were supposed to be Gibbsy and Claire, but they, like, Gibbsy and Claire felt like they were side characters in their own book, so that was weird. But overall, the book, like what happened in it was just so devastating, and like to see Gibbsy's perspective on everything and just seeing what he went through was just, it made me cry so much. So I definitely cried during that book the most. But Releasing 10, which is the 6th book in the series after Taming 7, that one was, I felt like that one had the most like trauma in it. Like it had the most like on page trauma, I guess I could say. Like I don't want to compare any of these characters' trauma because like that just, it makes the perpetrators win or whatever, but like I just felt like Releasing 10 had a lot of more on page, like you could see what actually happened to Lizzie and stuff, and so that book was a lot heavier to read. But all of these characters, like I could relate to them, I could see myself in them, and so I felt like that this was definitely my favorite series I've ever read. Last but not least, it's my favorite book of the year, My Dark Vanessa. Okay. If you've read this book, you understand. And if, hold on, let me set these books down. Okay. If you've read this book, you understand why it's my favorite. But I don't want to like say anything of what this book is like about on here because it is very, very heavy, very traumatic. And so, but I will say this one was the best book that I've ever read in my entire life. Like, throughout this whole book, I was just crying. I literally was being manipulated along with Vanessa in this book. I felt like I was being manipulated along with her. Like, I thought that the professor or like teacher in the book, I thought he was like charming at first. I was like, oh, Vanessa's like go good for her or whatever. But like, cause I'm 18 and I feel like this book is more for like people at least in their 20s. Like, this book is really, really heavy. But I did read it when I was 18 because I read it like a month ago, but I was 18 and I just feel like I was being manipulated along with Vanessa. Like, I didn't realize that this book was supposed to be about like realizing your abuse. I didn't realize that the book was about that. But until like stuff started getting like bad. Like page 100, like page 100, you know what I'm talking about. But I just felt like the fact that I was being manipulated along with Vanessa, and like I realized that, just shows how good the writing is and how dangerous a situation actually is for young teenagers and kids. Whenever a teacher or older person of authority is trying to form a relationship with a student or child or teenager or whatever. But this book was definitely my top read of the entire year, of my entire life. I say, okay, you know how people say 10 out of 10 book, would not recommend? That's how I feel about this book, because it's so traumatic and so heavy that I couldn't, like, in good faith recommend this book to anyone, I feel like, unless you were, like, I'm not recommending this to anyone younger than me. Do not read it if you are not 18, okay? Just, like, wait. But if you read it at a good time in your life where you are feeling stable, where you're feeling like you can take the material that's in this, then I feel like you would really like the book and really get something out of it. But if you do read it where you're not in a good headspace and you like have an experience similar to this, I feel like it could really affect you. So I wouldn't recommend if this book could be triggering for you. But like 10 out of 10 book, but would not recommend. But I do highly recommend if you do read the triggers and you understand what this book is about. But I would recommend it if you understand it and could handle the book. But anyway, those were my top reads of 2025. I read 52 books. I think those were like 7 books or series that were my favorite ones. I am pretty picky about what I read, so I do have a lot of good books I read this year but I only included the ones that I gave at least 4 stars. So all the other books I read this year, there are some 4-star reads that I didn't include in the video because they weren't necessarily like my favorites. But all the other books I gave like less than 4 stars. Because I am just really picky at stuff. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will probably post a video of my least favorite books of the year / biggest disappointments of the year. So watch that video next. Bye!